So what if the very same laws that govern exploding stars also dictate how we age and ultimately why we get sick? We're about to dive into a brand new framework that connects the massive physics of the cosmos to the tiny, intricate biology happening inside every single one of your cells. Now, this might sound like a weird question, but it gets at a really deep paradox at the heart of, well, everything. I mean, seriously, think about it for a second. Everything in the universe seems to have this built-in tendency to just fall apart. So why doesn't that happen to us? Why aren't you just a puddle of goo? On one hand, you've got the universe. It's governed by this fundamental law that pushes absolutely everything towards chaos and decay. But then there's life, us, which creates these little pockets of incredible, mind-bending order. So what gives? How do you square these two completely opposite forces?
Okay, so here's the official rule. It's called the second law of thermodynamics, and it basically says the universe is on a one-way street to maximum messiness. That messiness has a name, entropy. So the big question is, how can life, with all its amazing complexity, even exist? Well, a really revolutionary new framework has an answer. It's called WITCHCRAFT, and yeah, that's an acronym that we're going to break down as we go. And it completely flips this whole paradox on its head.
Here's the big idea. It's not that life magically resists chaos. No. It's that life has evolved to become the most sophisticated chaos-exporting machine we know of. It doesn't fight the river of disorder. It just gets really, really good at diverting its flow.
Let's be super clear on what we mean by entropy. Just think of it as the mess that gets created by any process. You know, when your car burns gas, you get motion, which is great, but you also get waste heat and exhaust. All that useless, disordered stuff, that is entropy. It's the unavoidable junk that comes from doing anything useful.
And this right here is the core of it all. Life doesn't get rid of disorder, it just moves it somewhere else. It keeps its own house incredibly tidy by constantly throwing its garbage out into the environment. And the better an organism is at doing that, the healthier and more resilient it is.
And this shows you exactly how that engine works. It's this constant cycle. You see on the left, you take in highly ordered, low-entropy fuel, food. In the middle, the engine uses that orderly energy to maintain itself, to do work, to live. And then on the right, it spits out all the high-entropy junk, things like carbon dioxide and messy, disordered heat. It's just a beautiful, efficient system for staying organized in a universe that wants everything to be messy.
So, how does this amazing entropy exporting engine actually work? Well, the WITCHCRAFT framework says it's not just one thing. It's actually built on 4 critical, interconnected systems, or pillars, that keep the whole shebang running smoothly. First up, we've got the metabolic pillar. This is the powerhouse. Think of it as the entire energy grid for your body. It's in charge of taking the fuel you eat and turning it into ATP, which is basically the high-energy cash that your cells spend to get anything done. Second, you've got the barrier pillar. These are the fortress walls. I mean, to keep your internal order, you have to be able to define what's inside and what's outside. And this happens at every single level, from the tiny membrane around one cell to your skin, to the lining of your gut, and even that super selective blood-brain barrier. These things are absolutely crucial for keeping the system intact. Third is the quality control pillar. This is your maintenance crew. I mean, as this whole engine is running, parts are going to wear out, right? Things break. This system is responsible for cleaning up that mess, fixing damaged proteins, recycling old components, all to make sure the information that keeps your body running stays accurate. And fourth, the immune pillar. This is your security system. It is constantly on patrol, and it's always asking one simple question. Are you part of me? And if the answer is no, it doesn't matter if it's an invading bacteria or one of your own cells that's gone rogue. The immune system is there to take out the threat. Okay, and here is where it gets really, really cool. These 4 biological pillars, they aren't just random. As you can see here, the framework argues that they are direct reflections of fundamental laws of physics. Metabolism is all about the conservation of energy. Barriers are about conserving charge. Quality control is about conserving information, and the immune system conserves identity. So biology isn't just making up its own rules, it's playing by the universe's rulebook. So, if that's how life stays so robust, then what exactly is aging? Well, this framework totally reframes it. Aging isn't just random decay. It's a predictable cascade of failures that happens when these 4 pillars start to weaken and their constraints bind. It just means the whole system starts running out of slack. It's not as flexible or resilient as it used to be. And the model actually predicts a surprisingly specific order for how this all goes down. It's like a slow-motion domino effect that plays out over decades. As you can see, it often kicks off with quality control in our mid-40s. The cellular cleanup crews just can't keep up anymore. That leads to leaky barriers about a decade later. Then the immune system gets confused. And finally, you get a metabolic crisis in our late 60s that we experience as frailty. It's a predictable cascade.
So as more and more of these pillars start to get wobbly and bind up, the entire system, the whole organism, loses its robustness. It becomes fragile. It loses its ability to handle any kind of stress, and its power to export that entropy we talked about just plummets.
Now, this systemic weakening from aging, it also creates the perfect storm for another kind of failure, cancer. The witchcraft framework sees cancer not just as cells growing out of control, but as a fundamental hijacking of the entire system's main goal.
A healthy cell is a team player. It cooperates with trillions of other cells to export disorder for the good of the entire organism. But a cancer cell? A cancer cell is selfish. It reverts to a much more primitive state where its only goal is to maximize its own entropy export, to fuel its own survival, even if it completely destroys the system that's hosting it.
The framework calls this a hierarchical collapse. The cell basically defects. It stops obeying the rules of being part of a big multicellular team and starts playing by its own single-celled rulebook. And that rogue survival strategy is what makes cancer so incredibly dangerous.
Okay, so let's zoom all the way back out for a second. What does all of this really mean? This is where the framework makes its most profound point, tying the biology of our cells right back to the fundamental physics of the entire universe.
What this suggests is that the strategies that life figured out, creating barriers, cleaning up waste, managing energy, they aren't just clever biological tricks that evolve by chance. No, they seem to be the necessary solutions to the problems that physics itself poses. Life had to solve for entropy, and these 4 pillars are the result.
And what that means ultimately is that the very architecture of life, its 4 pillars, its constant drive to export disorder, it's probably not an accident. It seems to be written into the very fabric of the universe itself. Life is just what happens when matter gets complex enough to start playing by these deep physical rules in a very, very clever way.
And that leaves us with a pretty provocative final thought. This whole framework shifts how we think about aging. Instead of seeing it as just a collection of diseases we have to cure, we can start to see it as the progressive breaking of fundamental physical symmetries. And if that's true, it raises an absolutely incredible question. Could we one day learn not just to slow it down, but to actually restore those symmetries, and in doing so, restore the whole system?